All right, welcome everybody to the July 22nd Board of Education special meeting. Um, we have identified the reopening plan, supplemental positions, and the Val-Sal policy that we'll be covering. Brennan, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. King,
Here.
Ms. Sebastian,
Here.
Mr. Elam,
Here.
Ms. Mansfield,
Here.
All right, next up is superintendent's items requesting board action. Turn it over to Mr. Firk, sir.
Mr. Hattery, could you please share the screen? Yes, perfect. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. This evening on the agenda for consideration will be Bethel Local Schools School District Return to School Contingency Plan for the 2020-2021 school year. First and foremost, I kind of want to let people know that we have created a school email address to allow individuals and folks to submit questions based on the attachments that have been made public view on this board docs website. So you should essentially see 4 documents. First one is the reopening plan in a Word document. Also put together a slide presentation, essentially highlighting the same information within that document. And then finally, infographics that give a high-level summary for the elementary level and then also middle school and high school levels. So as we mentioned previously, if you have any type of questions, please submit those questions to that FAQ@blsk12.org. Working very closely with our communications director, Holly Mutalu, we will be putting out either a informational video or an FAQ document responding to some of those questions. So first and foremost, the document is fairly extensive, but there is also a lot of information that still needs to be covered. A lot of intricacies on day-to-day operations, the ins and outs of how the school is going to operate, that further conversations need to transpire and take place. The plan that's being presented this evening is essentially 3 plans, Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. You can see those 3 plans as they're highlighted on the slide that's on your screen currently. Plan A would be return regular to school. So that's as of August 25th, the students in grades 1 through 12 and kindergarten students will resume session on August 27th. That is the plan as we are currently planning to return to school as is. Plan B would be if the state of Ohio or Governor DeWine would come back in and shut down schools and would place us back onto a remote learning environment that we experienced at the end of last school year. Once again, this could take place prior to school year starting, could take place in the middle of school year or towards the end of the school year based on state of Ohio orders. Once again, August 25th, grades 1 through 12 will start, August 27th for kindergarten. It will be a fully online environment provided by Bethel teachers as determined by the student schedules. To emphasize and highlight, this plan will only be used if we are not allowed to return to session as highlighted in Plan A above. Plan C is an option that we're currently in the process of developing with the Miami County Educational Service Center that will allow families who want their children to remain students of Bethel Local Schools but may not feel comfortable with sending their children back to school initially for a variety of personal reasons, that they can continue to provide education while at home and not have to withdraw from Bethel and go to a virtual learning academy or a number of other opportunities or options that are out there. And so to highlight again, this plan is to be used only if the district is operating under Plan A or B, and the family decides to not send their children back to school due to various personal or health or safety reasons due to COVID-19. So what we're going to be highlighting tonight is essentially plans A or C. Plan B will be if the governor or the state of Ohio shuts this down right away. Okay, keep scrolling down. To kind of highlight some of the student schedules with Plan A. As we talked about before, Excuse me. Can you scroll back up, Brendan? There might be a mix-up here. Hold on. Actually, could you go, Brendan, could you switch over to the document, please? The Word document. And go to Plan A. Go to District Reopening Guide. Share that screen. Yep. Then scroll down to Plan A. So kind of highlight a little bit of the student schedule with Plan A. Students will attend their regular classes as scheduled. As a district, we've made a collective decision, grades kindergarten through 12, that we are going to transition away from Schoology and move towards Google Classroom. This will allow for more consistency throughout the district. It will allow for ease of transition with the use of Google Classroom, which automatically syncs with Progress Book, and it will offer many of the same capabilities that Schoology does in regards to being able to post online videos, documents, school working projects, conversations, etc. We do ask that families provide a working email address through Final Forms, which will allow us to sync Google Classrooms with individual student classrooms. In regards to restrictions, as you can see from some of the information that was released today, we are going to have to make some changes right away to our plan. So initially, we had anticipated having students wear masks in between classes in the hallways and also waiting for buses in the auditorium and on the school buses. We were also going to have students wear face coverings on buses for all school and extracurricular activities. We were going to require staff members to wear face coverings when they could not maintain social distancing of 6 feet. Obviously, with Governor DeWine's information today, as of tomorrow, all students, I believe, 10 years of age and older will be required to wear a face covering if they cannot maintain 6 feet of distancing. Mr. Pogorski, is that how you kind of understood that thought today?
Yes.
Okay. So this is obviously already out of compliance, and we're going to have to make some adjustments to it. And I guess this kind of highlights the reason why we've tried to take our time and be slow and steady with this process, knowing that there's going to be potentially continued changes that take place, and that we have to follow all of the guidelines, laws, regulations, and rules set forth by not only our local health department, but the state of Ohio and the governor's office. We're also going to, within classrooms, have classroom desks facing forward as much as possible. We are also going to try to eliminate small group sessions as much as possible. We're going to continue to up our cleaning of desks and equipment that can be done via custodial crew, also teachers being willing to help out. And we're going to have students in grades 6 through 12 be permitted to carry backpacks throughout the building to limit the amount of traffic in the hallways. We've also talked about adding additional cubby spaces within classrooms to allow the elementary kids to have backpacks in classrooms as well. If you could continue to scroll through, Brennan, that'd be great. One of our provisions also, and a lot of these healthcare provisions were in direct coordination with the Miami County Health Department. And so those meetings have taken place on numerous occasions via Zoom and also personal meeting with all of the superintendents in Miami County, in addition to health department officials, which really they've helped drive a lot of the information that's been located in here. So they're recommending that all students and staff that have a fever over 100 degrees Fahrenheit stay home. Plan C will be an online option for those that don't feel comfortable, as we talked about previously. Plan B will be a return if we are recommended to by the state of Ohio or the governor's office. You can see some of the student schedules that will, the provisions that will take place there. As you can see, we realize that although our staff stepped up tremendously during that time, there's also a number of things that we can do better on our end to provide the best educational environment and experience for not only our kids, but also our students, our parents as well. We are very, very close to being one-to-one for the district. And so we're at a place and a time where if we have to go back to a remote learning experience, we will be able to provide a student-issued Chromebook for every student in the district. But we will obviously have our staff work with our technology department to ensure that happens. We will work very closely with parents to ensure that the proper acceptable usage policies are in place and signed off on to ensure that the care of our school property as well. We will also expect to have more live learning sessions through Google Hangout or a variety of different other Google options that are out there that provide opportunities for our staff to videotape themselves and allow students to go back at a later time to view those presentations and have more live modeling sessions over skills and standards and independent practice activities that are built in as well. A lot of these things are still to be determined. We would work very closely with our staff moving forward on what live office hours would look like, but it's just to know that parents will have an opportunity to be able to reach out to staff and receive a timely response either via phone call or email on any questions or concerns that they have to once again provide some consistency throughout the district as far as communication. Continue to scroll down, Brennan. You can see some of the restrictions. Scroll up just a little bit to restrictions. You can see this contingency plan will be announced as soon as possible if that guideline or recommendation comes down from the state level. Students and parents can expect regular, consistent coursework. Grades will be handled evenly as far as weight and value across the district. As far as in-person activities, I know last year we did a lot of pass incomplete type scores. We would continue this year with our grading scale as is, with additional time and preparation with upcoming professional development that we're in the process of planning for the summer and providing staff with what they need to be successful. Plan C would be if families don't feel comfortable coming back to school. So once again, this is a collaborative effort between the ESC and Bethel local schools and really all of Miami County schools, minus some of the bigger districts that are able to start a virtual learning academy on their own because of the additional support and resources that they have. If you look down to student schedules, if you could scroll down a little bit, Brennan. Once again, I want to highlight the fact that students in this plan will remain a student at Bethel local schools. They will participate in an online course through the ESC. Students will be able to take the courses as provided within our course description guide at Bethel local schools, but they will not be able to take courses that are not offered at BLS. Bethel local schools, staff members and teachers will not be monitoring these courses. This will be a teacher provided by the ESC and the company that they employ as a third-party entity. Students, I want to emphasize, will be able to continue to take all of those courses that we offer here, but they will not be able to participate through the ESC with such extracurricular, co-curricular courses as band and choir. Can they still participate in those courses? Absolutely. They'll just need to come onto campus to participate in those two opportunities. Students will also, once again, be allowed the opportunity to provide opportunities and given chances to participate in sports, athletic activities, National Honor Society, any type of clubs, chess clubs, scholastic team, all of those things that Bethel local school students will be able to participate in. Students will also be on the same holiday schedule and also day off schedule as Bethel local schools. So they'll be on the same Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, spring break. If they're on a 2-hour delay, it'll be similar. If they're on a day off because of an inclement day, it'll be similar as well. We do ask families as they review this plan and have those hard conversations at home to be able to give us an answer on whether they want to participate in option C by August 7th. Why is this a date for them? To essentially allow the ESC time to be able to create courses, enroll students, set up the necessary online platforms to allow students to be able to have these opportunities. We do say, though, we are asking, though, and this is coming from the ESC, that students will only be able to participate in these courses one semester at a time. So if you choose to enroll in option C on August 7th, you will have to remain in that program up until Christmas break. At Christmas break, if you choose to not participate in that program anymore, you can come back to Bethel local schools. I think what the ESC is trying to avoid is having students jumping in and out of the program on a week-to-week or month basis, and it's going to become very problematic for them to monitor and supervise when they're dealing with almost every county school with this opportunity, minus, I think, Piqua and Troy are the only ones that are doing their own virtual academies. Restrictions and precautions. Scroll down, Brennan. Once again, students may still participate in all curricular and co-curricular activities. All grading scales will be equal to Bethel local schools. We do ask students to obviously have the ability to access the internet. Any student that didn't turn in their computer last year that borrowed one will need to return that computer or show proof that it's still viable and usable before they can participate in option C. That was more put in there as a precautionary provision on our end. We've been able to have conversations with our tech department. We do not have any outstanding computers at this point. So credit to those students and families for returning what we currently already had out. And we will also expect students in this distant learning option to complete all state and district testing requirements. We have not received any guidelines yet from the state of Ohio if we're going to have standardized tests yet. Have you heard anything on your end, Mr. Pogierski, in regards to state tests?
I think they're debating right now the feasibility of doing that, but nothing committed so far for 2021.
Okay, thank you. Brandon, could you scroll back down, please? Once again, here are some general opening guidelines, reopening guidelines. Almost 100% of this information came strictly from the health department. So they are asking that all students and staff members via their families at home do temperature and health checks and monitor that very closely on a daily basis before coming to school. They give some general informational guidelines on what practical hand washing type responsibilities should be, what the percentages of alcohol-based hand sanitizers should be, and that we should encourage students and staff to wash their hands and sanitize their hands as much as possible as we can during the school day while avoiding touching those particular areas which allows the virus to spread. We will also be providing, continue to scroll down, Brennan, additional times throughout the district for deep cleaning of the building. If you look, and I'm not going to ask Brennan to, but if you look back to the main page where I had kind of an informational document that emphasizes and highlights some of the main areas of our reopening plan, we will provide additional time for our custodial services throughout the year, basically built around in-service days, holidays, days away from school that are planned in the calendar, October 23rd, November 24th, December 21st and 22nd, January 4th, March 26th through 22nd, April 2nd, and April 5th, to continue to do a lot of the deep cleaning of the building that's been being done right now over the summer. I think people will be very excited and happy with the amount of work that's been done in the summer and the amount of cleaning that's has taken place to get us to a position where we can reopen school back. Staff and student illness. We ask that any staff member or student with a fever of 100 degrees or higher to stay home. And here are some of the symptoms that you need to be on the watch for on those daily student wellness checks, staff wellness checks, in regards to cough, shortness of breath, headache, sore throat, all of those things that have been listed. And like I said, most of this stuff came directly from the health department. Brendan, can you continue to scroll down, please? Returning to school after illness. So if a student or staff member is diagnosed with COVID-19, we are asking that they meet the following criteria before they can return. Number one is 3 days without a fever, without the use of any sort of a fever medication, and other symptoms improved that have been listed above, or also 10 days out from a positive test date. The Miami County Health Department, I want to emphasize this to students, staff, and parents. They will essentially take over immediately any positive diagnosis in regards to COVID-19. They will be coming in right from the get-go. They will be running a case investigation. They will do contact tracing throughout the district, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to help provide some of those opportunities to have contact tracing with seating charts, et cetera, throughout various locations. But they will communicate directly with families. They will communicate directly with the school system and staff. All communication in regards to a potential positive illness will come from the health department. It will not come from Bethel Local Schools. They will determine the length of isolation or quarantine from families. They will identify the number of students that need to be, or staff that need to be isolated. They will also determine the length of isolation. They will communicate via U.S. mail and a form letter. So those are kind of some of the things that the health department has set forth and how they're handling things throughout the county. So there is consistency across the county in every school system. I wish in some cases we have more local control. In this case, we're going to turn it over to the health department officials who are trained and experienced in this matter to handle it moving forward. And a lot of that stuff I just communicated and what's followed in the next highlighted areas as far as communication and how it will be handled. Brennan, will you continue to scroll down, please? Classroom occupancy. Once again, we are going to do everything we can to ensure that we decrease the amount of risk as much as possible that we can. But people need to understand also that anytime you come back to school, the school district and yourself personally will incur some level of risk. And occupancy will be determined upon a lot of those guidelines that are being set as far as the health department on social distancing and what is adequate. We are asking that all students and staff members carry face coverings on them at all times. And as I mentioned previously at the beginning, the governor has indicated that all students as of tomorrow at 6 p.m. Ages 10 and older will need to have a face covering on at all times when they're out in public, as long as they cannot keep 6 feet of distancing. Brandon, can you continue to scroll down, please? Visitors, volunteers, and parties. So visitors for this start of the school year will be discouraged from being in school buildings. We ask that if a visitor has to come into the office setting to handle some sort of an attendance matter or picking up assignments from a missing student, from an illness or flu or whatever it might be, that they obviously are going to have a face covering on them as well. We may ask them potential health and screening questions and take temperature checks that could be done by our school nurse if we feel it's needed. We're also going to require, like I mentioned before, that our visitors wear masks and that they maintain proper social distancing as they're in the office. And if we don't feel like we can maintain the proper distancing, we may ask some people to stand out in the vestibule area until they can come in. Because of all the items going on, school parties and bringing in of food from the outside to start the school year will be prohibited. So this goes with all birthday parties, celebrations, carry-ins, food that's brought in from the outside, candy that's being distributed to kids. There will be no food handed out to start the school year. And that's how we're going to start the year dealing with it. Food services. These are a lot of the recommendations that came down from the health department. So looking at alternative locations for student dining, what could that potentially look like? That might look like middle school and high school kids having to eat lunch in a classroom setting. It could look at staggered lunches to allow smaller grade levels to be in the cafeteria and not an overflow of students in a full capacity setting. So we have another meeting with the health department and the ESC on Friday of this week. We'll be asking additional questions in regards to alternative locations. I want people to realize that although this document's pretty lengthy, we haven't covered everything, and it's impossible to have everything covered at the first go around. I will say we've put a lot of time and thought into it, and we still have to have a lot of discussion that takes place in regards to a lot of the very specific questions that I know people will have. And that's why we've created that email address to be able to provide a vehicle for individuals to ask certain questions. In the cafeteria, there will be no self-service. So you will have a cafeteria employee who will be serving all food in those items. We will provide seating charts in the cafeteria for all students in grades K through 12. That will allow the health department to come in and assist with contact tracing if need be. Individual condiments will not be an issue because we already have those in our cafeteria setting. Students will be permitted to bring a packed lunch to school each day. So that will be the only food that's going to be allowed to be brought in. But we are not going to have a shared table this year, and we are not going to allow students to share lunch items amongst each other. If students prefer not to handle currency with lunches, we do have the online option to purchase lunches through Pay for Schools. Brendan, if you could scroll down through transportation. Our guidelines coming from the health department will be 2 students per seat. And if we have some small kiddos that are on the bus, we may potentially, depending upon age, be able to fit 3. We will be loading the bus from back to front. We are also going to expect or require all students within the same household to sit together. And we will also be having assigned seats on buses this year as well. Face coverings will be required for all the drivers and the students. If the student does not have a mask, or if they forgot a mask, one will be provided to them. If a child chooses not to wear a mask for personal reasons, we will still transport them to school, make sure they arrive safe and securely. We will transport them in the front of the bus, and then we will immediately, upon arrival, notify a building administrator to be able to handle it. So, and just let people know that if it continues to be an issue, that students are refusing to wear it, the district could potentially deny future transportation for not wearing a face mask, face covering. If a student or staff member has a medical reason for not being able to wear a face covering, we would expect that they would present the proper documentation showing the reasons why, and then we will meet their medical accommodations. House Bill 410 truancy. This is one, Brian, if you could scroll down, that I know is out there. As of right now, Mr. Pogorski, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the bill that the governor signed last year will expire here soon, if it has not already. There has not been any conversations that I'm aware of, unless you are, in regards to House Bill 410. We will notify people and let them know that those provisions are still in place as of today. But we will still be very flexible and work with people in regards to missing schoolwork and the opportunity to make up that work because of that. Is that correct, Mr. Pogorski? Has there been any talk in regards to that?
I share your understanding. The governor's executive order regarding exceptions to both of these has expired. It is anticipated that he will authorize some exceptions, but to date, the statutes are in play for the upcoming school year.
Correct. Okay. So as we mentioned previously, anybody that has any questions, please email that FAQ@blsk12.org, and we will be putting out an FAQ or a video very, very soon answering all of the questions as we have conversations and figure out plans. Field trips. For the first semester, Bethel Local Schools will not be conducting any external field trips for that first semester. Graciously, our travel company has already provided an alternative date for Washington, D.C. Very fortunate to have that set up. The plan is to host the Washington, D.C. trip March 16th through 19th of 2021, so it will not be held this fall, but at least people have plenty of notice and time to make adjustments. So thanks to Mr. Ziegler and working with that travel company very closely to make sure that our kids, if we're allowed to have that opportunity this spring, if we would happen to get better numbers or a potential cure. Recess. I know there's going to be a lot of questions in regards to recess. Bethel Local Schools will be making every effort to maintain consistency with other safety procedures. Because of that reason, our standard recess equipment, it's going to be very tough to maintain that. And so we're going to have that off limits to start the school year. We are going to provide ample green space opportunity for classes and staff and teachers to be able to run freely, play with their classmates, but also maintain social distancing. And so you may be asking yourself, well, where is that green space? We're going to be using our football field for this year for recess. We already have that in place. And so it's going to be divided. There'll be classroom equipment for each classroom so we don't have to share equipment. And we're going to be able to also use potentially practice fields located directly behind the football field, soccer and football as well. It's not practical. I know it's a little bit of a walk, but I think we're all going to be able to adjust and adapt and make the best of the situation. Students and staff will sanitize their hands after recess. We will also provide an opportunity for families to opt out. What that opt out is going to look like, that's part of one of the examples that we're going to have a lot more discussion on. And we'll work with the staff, and we'll also work with the building administrators and the families to come up with some different opportunities for those students to participate in activities during that time. As we mentioned before, to start the school year, our playground equipment will not be utilized just because of how much cleaning and maintaining it's going to have to be done throughout the course of the day. Brandon, could you continue to scroll down, please? Here's the contact information that we're putting out there. Hopefully folks find this very beneficial. You can see a name, email address, and phone number for principals, Director of Special Education Services, School Nursing Services, Curriculum, Technology, Communications Director, Transportation Director, Food Services, Athletics, Facilities, and then also myself. I also want to highlight to folks that we are doing our due diligence to try to eliminate issues in the past with transportation. As we roll out final forms this year, we are learning day by day some of the things that we've done well with the setup and some of the things that we may need to address. Worked closely with the building administrators, Mrs. Gail Rhodes, our transportation director, and also building principals to add an additional question on final forms under transportation to specifically allow families and parents to indicate whether they plan on taking transportation for next year. It's a simple yes or no question. And so our routes are going to be built around those students who opt into transportation this year and are not going to be transported by a family member or a parent. This is going to hopefully allow us to have more accurate count numbers, which will allow us to develop more accurate routes, where in the past, a lot of the routes were developed where everybody was placed on a route. And that's very, very difficult to do, especially when you've had students that have driven to school for 2 or 3 years and have not taken a bus route. And so if you could log into your Final Forms account and update your transportation form in question, that would be great, because that will allow Mrs. Rhodes and the transportation department to continue to provide the necessary services to meet the needs of our family members and students in the community. I know there's going to be a lot of questions in regards to the plan as we move forward. We've also attached, as I mentioned before, a kind of a high level 20,000 foot cloud level infographic for middle school, high school, and also elementary. We've also provided a PowerPoint. Some of the PowerPoint slides need to be adjusted a little bit, so that's why we kind of referred back to this. I kind of put that together late, and I know people are going to have questions, and I know there's going to be a lot more discussion that needs to take place. And so we continue to ask for people's grace. We continue to ask for their patience. It's not an easy time. It's not going to be a popular decision whether we decide to come back to school or not come back to school, or whether we have the playground open or not. I understand that. I understand that completely. Just ask that you continue to email the email address that we provided, faq@blsk12.org, and you can fully expect that we will have regular and frequent FAQ releases or video releases from myself, working closely with our communications director, Holly Mutulu, to make sure that we answer all of your questions as we have the conversations with staff, administrators, board, families, etc. Thank you for your time on that.
Thank you, Justin. Jacob had to step away a few minutes, so he asked if I would take over the meeting briefly. I know, again, everybody's going to have a lot of questions. Teachers and staff have submitted a list, and we've gotten some from YouTube, but Justin did ask, please send your questions to faq@blsk12.org. Board, is there anything you would like to say at this time? Okay. Justin, do you want to move on to the supplemental
Yeah,
positions?
I could. I just kind of wanted to do one clarification. I think I caught myself in a misspoken statement in regards to option C, which would be the ESC program. I think I said end of second night. It should be the end of the semester, because I think realize the semester ends after we come back from Christmas break. So I may have mentioned end of second 9 weeks. It'll be the end of the second semester or semester when folks can come back. Also, in regards to face masks, the district is providing face masks to all staff and personnel. We are also buying a supply to have on school buses, in the clinic, and also in the offices. But we would ask for students to provide their own mask. We will have a supply of extras in case a student forgets one, or if they lost one when they were at school, and we'll have some. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that as well.
Thank you, Justin. Can you go on to approval of the 2020-2021 supplemental positions, please?
Yeah, Brendan, could you bring that up for me, please, on the screen? There's a couple of supplemental positions that are on here related to coaching positions. The first one would be Antoine Derrick. His resume is attached. Mr. Derrick will be filling the role of girls junior varsity basketball coach for this upcoming year. At the last meeting, we had a resignation of Josh Anderson as the JV girls coach to allow Coach Anderson to move back down to the 7th grade girls position where he feels most comfortable. So Mr. Anderson is a returning coach, just changing levels. Coach Derrick is a new coach to the district this year, and I've attached his resume for the board to take a look at. Those are the two items that I had on the agenda for this evening.
Thank you, Justin. Can I have a motion to place the items from the superintendent's report on the consent calendar?
I'll move.
Thank you, Danny.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lyda. Is there any discussion on either item?
Thank you, Justin, and the staff for all your preparation here for the reopening. And even though it's a work in progress, looks like you made some great decisions.
I appreciate that. Like I said, it's far from perfect. There's a lot more work to do. A lot of the early conversations were driven at the county level. And so, I fully anticipate having additional conversations very, very soon with administration and staff and board in regards to a lot of the intricacies in the day-to-day operations that I know people are going to have questions on. To be frank, we just haven't had time to get there yet because we've been trying to focus in on the high-level stuff right now.
Hello, team. This is Jacob. I'm back online. The comments that I would have is specifically focused on the return back to the school. I think we all have to identify specifically that this is primarily the framework. The key areas are the A, B, and C aspects, noting that several of the items will change based on state guidance or issues we find when we bring the students back, that gaps that we may find, and as we address many of the questions that are asked by the community, teachers, and staff. Lori, go ahead and continue for this portion of the motion.
Okay, Brennan, can you call the roll, please?
Hold on, I was going to speak too. I just wasn't sure Jacob was finished. I'm sorry. I just want to say, is everyone really sure that we 100% want to open and we don't want to pause for just a little bit and give this thing some time? I mean, we don't really have a lot of data about what it's like having these kids all in the building since we did close in March when the numbers were way, 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 way lower. And we're hearing a lot more about the long-term morbidities of how this affects, people and students after they have contracted the virus. And we don't really know a whole lot about that, but we know that there are some long-term effects to students and adults after they contract it. And frankly, again, like I've spoken to you guys about it before personally, that we are this connected K-12 building, and they're showing that older students, you know, they pass and contract it just like adults do. And since we're all connected K through 12, I just have a lot of concerns about our building compared to your normal schools that have a different K-5 versus an intermediate versus a high school. I just think we're a different case than everybody else.
Lyda,
And I don't say that to run down the plan. This is the best plan we could come up with if we're opening our doors. I do want to say that I am very appreciative of the plan that we have. I think it's a fabulous plan, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And I do not say that to denigrate anything that's been put together. I just want to discuss if we're doing what we should do right now.
Lyda, this is Jacob, and
Yes,
you
sir.
bring up excellent topics that I think all of us are thinking about and discussing as well as family, teachers, and staff. But this plan, establishing the framework, isn't truly establishing a dead set. We're starting on that date, right? The school dates are the dates that have been set, but we have to at least provide the three options that we can provide right now and allow parents to start planning for how they want to step through the virus at the school if it does open as stated on the dates. And I think that's the key element we're trying to provide, is kind of the framework of what we're trying to do. And then obviously we're going to be monitoring everything that is occurring in our community and in the county and in the state of Ohio, noting that many things could change. Even school may not start. We could even get a mandate from the governor that states that all schools will be online for the first semester of the school period. So those are a lot of the unknowns that we have right now. So the only thing we have that's our best foot forward is at least establish a reopening plan for initial planning purposes for not only the staff, teachers, and students and their parents, so that they have at least something to see of what we're trying to do.
I see that, and I hear you. I really do. And I think that we have that now. And I think that people have seen that now. But I really do think that when we say that in this document, the plan is to reopen on the first day of school, I really do think our vote says that we're sending kids into school unless we hear from the governor that they're closed. I feel like that's what our vote is saying. And as opposed to someone like Trotwood right down the street who said they're going to take the first quarter to be online because they don't feel like it's the right time. And the board is taking that initiative to say they don't feel it's safe, and really putting their students first and saying what they honestly feel in their heart is the right thing to do for students. I think we need to kind of back up and really think about that as a board ourselves, if we really feel like this is the safe time to put our students in that environment.
I think those are very valid points, Lyda, as well. But the school you brought up is in a level 3 health advisory county. Although it is close to us, there's a pretty significant difference in the impact of the virus in that district versus what we're seeing in our district. We've already voted for the school calendar that's already established the start dates. The plan is just reiterating what we've already approved. And it does not mean that we can't change the plan next week to add a D section of the plan as well, or modify it. So that's the piece that I guess it's my view, as this plan is establishing our framework for how we're going to step through the reopening part of this pandemic. But you have extremely valid points as well that we should be evaluating even as we go into our next work session. I believe there should be a full discussion with regards to the framework of this plan. What are we seeing, and do we think it's right and the safest for the environment of our kids?
I would welcome that discussion. I really do feel like it's a discussion we haven't really had before, and I think we really need to have that conversation.
I mean, we can certainly continue to have additional conversations, and I know it's been a little bit of time, and some things have changed. So I want you to take that with a grain of salt. But you know, we did do a community/parent survey that I shared with you folks previously. We had pretty significant input on that survey, even more so than what we had on our facilities survey. And at that time, a strong percentage of the families and parents in the district had indicated they would like to see their kids come back to school. But I do know that things have changed medically a little bit. But I mean, I feel like we've done our due diligence this year with staff, with families, with community, of really taking some of the concerns that maybe have been expressed previously and trying to include more people's input on a lot of different things, from committees to hiring practices to community forums to input on architectural firms to selection of administrators, all those type things. So.
And it's not like it's one way or the highway. People are getting a choice here.
I wasn't trying to say that to argue with you, Ms. Mansfield. I just wanted to share that as well. That wasn't my intent.
No, I know. I appreciate that. I really do. And I think I, shared with you that, you hear from parents from time to time, and they're saying how if they took the survey today, they may respond differently than they did in June. And, because it is an ever-changing environment, we've talked about that too. Every day there's something else breaks in the news, just like the governor's announcement today. So, it was a wonderful survey in June, and I feel like we got some really valid information. But again, ask me today and my opinion may change, and ask me tomorrow and it may be different again. So
I mean, I think that's a very valid point too, and I think you probably do have some legitimate statements there when you say just because people chose one thing in June doesn't mean they're going to choose the same thing now. You're very right there. So,
Justin, can you reiterate Plan A and Plan C? Who will be teaching the child?
Well, Plan A would be traditional back at school here at Bethel Local Schools, being instructed by their traditional BLS staff member. Option C would be through the ESC. It would be a licensed teacher through the ESC. It would not be a Bethel Local Schools employee or staff member.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had one additional question with regards to if our community members choose to do the Plan C for the online. Will there be Chromebooks available for them to utilize for that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would ask that they need to provide internet access, but we would be able to issue a Chromebook based on the inventory numbers that we've taken this summer and taking a look at the number of devices we have versus the number of students in the district. We would be able to provide devices to those students. And we would more than likely be able to provide devices to every student in the district if we went to an option B, where the governor shut us down, which I think would take care of some of the issues where family members expressed during one of our surveys that sure, they have devices, but they may have 2 devices and 4 kids at home and they're fighting over 2 devices. So we would actually be able to provide enough where they could be working and not have to restrict the amount of time available. Or they may have a parent that works at home that can't allow them to have access to their device all day long when they have work to do. Does anyone else have any other additional questions?
Okay, then Brennan, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield,
yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Ms. Reese is absent.
All right.
And-
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar with the items from the superintendent's report?
I'll move.
Thank you, Lori. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny, for the second. Any further discussion? Brennan, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield.
I just can't. I'm sorry. No, in my heart, I can't.
Ms. Reese is absent.
All right. Thank you. I know Mr. Firks has a hard stop at 6:30. So number 3, the item for discussion is the Val-Sal policy. Brennan, are you able to present that?
I never received it.
Okay, thank you.
With the members.
I didn't copy you.
I thought I shared that via email. Did I not?
No, I received it. In regards to the items for discussion, with the current Val-Sal policy, I think the biggest area of contention that we had is when are we to implement it? It's gone back and forth from different class years to make it a current portion of the policy, and that was one of the areas that I thought was that needed further discussion.
Jacob, do you have the ability to make that screen shared, or do you want to wait?
I have it up on the screen.
Okay.
Well, in all reality, right, I think the most key element, and with regards to the Val-Sal policy, and maybe our true discussion would be when the high school principal is available, as well as the guidance counselors, so that we could have an in-depth discussion to make sure that the decision we make is correct, and not impact students that are currently in the system as well, that are focused on being valedictorian and salutatorian based on the current Val-Sal policy that we have published and that they've been working on since, 6th grade or 9th grade, focusing to achieve those goals. But it would be very difficult for me to articulate that effectively without Mr. Swoper and the guidance counselors with us to help us step through that. My suggestion would be is that we have further discussion at our August work session with the high school principal and the guidance counselors and our legal advisor. That could help us step through this to ensure that we're in compliance with Ohio Department of Education requirements and the Ohio Revised Code requirements that are all levied against us, and ensuring that the policy is correct. But I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are.
I think those thoughts are perfectly in line with what I'm thinking as well, except I'm not sure that the guidance counselors are back by the 4th for our work session. I don't know if their duty dates aren't until maybe the 17th. So that presents a problem.
Well, then I think the key then would be is having the high school principal, Mr. Swope, there to help guide us in that discussion. And if it requires further discussion after August 4th, then we'd focus that around not only him, but the guidance counselors. Great point, Lida, again. Thank you.
For sure. I just don't want to overpromise anybody.
Hey, Brennan, just a quick question. I'm not saying they would have to do this, but does their extended service time start then as well?
It's whatever days they decide. So, I mean, that's between the guidance counselors and the high school principal.
I mean, that could be an option where they use some of their extended days,
Yeah.
extended days time to come in for that meeting as well. Just an option.
Yes, and I agree, Jacob, with what you've suggested. And I also know we had a few students and perhaps a parent or two who wanted to comment on this. I think the more appropriate time for them to do that would be when Mr. Swope is back at the August work session.
And I bet if the counselors are available, that they would make themselves available, even if they're not getting paid.
And I agree with you, Danny, as well. I think, they know this is extremely important to our students and how much they care for the growth of our students and them achieving their goals, that they would be right there to help us make sure the plan does that. So I think if we don't really have any further true discussion on the Val-Sal policy, then does anybody have further discussion on the Val-Sal policy?
My only question would be, what are we doing with the student handbook? Were those printed without the policy in it?
That'll be a question I need to ask Mr. Swope. He is on vacation right now, so I can send him a text message or an email and see what he has done. I kind of gave him that as an option and asked for a follow-up. I have not heard back in regards to that yet.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to see how that goes. I know we were kind of back and forth at the last meeting with regards to printing the handbook without it, or we may end up with an electronic version of a handbook and a separate Val-Sal policy later. But I think this is extremely important, and I think we have to take our time and make sure that we get it right. And so I'm willing to step back and take the time to ensure that it is right. So based on that, no other items for discussion with regards to the Val-Sal policy, then I would go.
Just another option as well, Mr. King, sorry.
Yes, sir.
We do have some flexibility within our school calendar this year as it's currently created, not saying it won't change. With that creativity that we have within it, we have flex time built in this year, which will allow staff members professional development opportunities, times for professional growth, meetings. They actually owe us 2 days of flex time for the school year, the way the calendar is set up. My point is that flex time could potentially be used as well for the counselors to come in for that meeting.
Okay.
We have a
Sounds
couple
good.
of options, either flex time, extended time, whatever.
Copy that, sir. Then I think they should be there to represent the students if they can be. And I would ask that you work with Mr. Swope and to get that, to advise us what do they think is best.
Okay.
All right. With no further discussions on that item, we'll go to number 4 for adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move. This is Lida.
Thank you, Lida. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny, for the second. Any further discussion? Brennan, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. So I have the meeting adjourned at 6:35 p.m.